Hey guys, how you doing? Um, Today I want to continue talking about violence and the protests and what's going on in the United States and what can spill over here into Canada pretty easily. Um, let's just start from the very top, I suppose. Neoliberal capitalism has lost its credibility. It has no credibility. Um, I've been saying for a little while now, and I think it's absolutely fundamentally true. Neoliberalism is not an economic system. Neoliberalism is a religious ideology, right? Maybe you can make the argument that it's a political ideology, but in no way is it an economic system. It's been completely defrauded, it's been completely discredited. The idea that we should shovel money into the hands of people who already have fabulously high sums of wealth, uh, and then it'll magically trickle down into the economy somehow. At this stage in the game, to believe that, you have to be on the same level as believing in Santa Claus, or the flat Earth, or even Holocaust denial on some level. Like these people are delusional. If you genuinely believe that we'll give a big tax cut, shovel a bunch of money into the richest hands, and then they'll turn around and trickle it back down into the society that gave them the tax break in the first place, you're out of your mind. Like, you're absolutely out of your mind. The Take a look at Elon Musk's. Like, he's just running after passion projects, things he thinks is valuable, right? So like, he spends a bunch of his money getting into space, and it's like, we've been doing that for decades. Like, we've been doing that since the 60s, right? The Russians have been doing that, the Chinese have been doing that through their governments, right? The idea that, oh, now we have allowed a private owner to get into space where there are no laws and people can be completely unaccountable to anything. Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Like, that's pretty stupid, right? Like, I think you have to actually be really dumb to think that Elon Musk entering the space race and being part of the space community is a good idea. I think you actually have to be a real stupid person or a complete bootlicker to actually go along with the idea that it's totally cool that some privately owned industry can now compete in the space can compete in space against nations, against entire groups of human beings, right? Like, I think you have to be nuts. And so people are seeing these kinds of things, right? And neoliberal capitalism, because it is completely lost, and our leadership is steadily losing its credibility, right? Like, here, like in the United States, your leadership is completely like no credibility whatsoever, right? There's just no credibility whatsoever. Donald Trump is a total farce. Joe Biden is a complete and total farce. The idea that there was I've seen pitched around the idea that Bernie Sanders was the end of the negotiations, and I think that there's something true about that. That for many people, they looked at Bernie Sanders as maybe the last possible hope that there could be some amelioration through the political structure. That's a complete farce. That's a complete fraud. Joe Biden is a complete fraud in that regard. So the entire political system has lost its validity. And it's lost its validity at the behest of a religious ideology. And this religious ideology of neoliberalism, which is a policy of total abandonment and death and destruction, like, it's structured as a death cult. That's what it is. These protesters who have gotten out in the street have fundamentally recognized that the entire institution, like all of the structures that exist, no longer have any credibility whatsoever. And there are groups within the protest movement who agree and who understand that. There's a couple of things about this. Looting redistributes wealth, right? If you go to a Target and you loot it, it redistributes wealth into the society, right? So the society said pretty clearly, we want you to redistribute wealth, and then they gave a bunch of tax cuts to billionaires. And then the populace went, no, seriously, we want you to redistribute wealth. And then the billionaires got more tax cuts. And so once the protests started, there was a group of people who were like, no, we were quite serious when we said redistribute the wealth. We were quite serious about that. And so they went and took that wealth, and they smashed the place that refused to distribute that wealth. In theological terms, I use theological terms all the time. Neoliberalism is a death cult. It is a religious ideology. I've said that already. In theological terms, right, what people are doing is they are going around and they're smashing the temples, right? They're going around and they're smashing the temples. They are doing what Jesus attempted to do and got crucified for. They are going around to institutions that hold no validity any longer, that are strictly cult sections. They're places where cultists operate from, and they're removing it from the society, right? It's like a new wave of philosophy is coming through the society, and they are absolutely decimating and smashing it. Every day I'm seeing more stories about police resigning. The police who resigned in Buffalo, for example, right? I believe their resignation was strictly fueled by their officers told them to do something which got them arrested, right? That's what happened. Their officers told them to do something, and so the police went and did that thing that their officers told them to do, and they got arrested for it. And under those circumstances, I think there were 57 officers in the Buffalo Police Department who said, well, I'm not going to be arrested for something my officer orders me to do, so I'm going to resign instead. These resignations are like the collapse of the Roman Empire, right? Every time police officers kind of fall away, right? The weaker the establishment gets, the weaker the political establishment gets. Again, I really want to reiterate one thing, especially what has really lost the police forces a ton of credibility, and has made it. They actually can't come back from it, right? They actually can't come back from the. Once the populace begins to understand, like I was so frustrated with that Joe Rogan, Pete Seeger, and Crystal Ball interview, but the populace does understand that the police are instigating the looting, and the police are instigating violence, and the police are instigating the riots, right? We have footage of them smashing up places. We have footage of them breaking up places. We have footage of them doing this kind of stuff. And that means that the police have lost their credibility completely, and they can never come back from it. Because the one thing that the right is hitting on is we need to send in the military in order to stop these looters, at least. Not the protesters, the looters. We have to at least do that. And then we just show them video of the police looting. And we show them videos of the police smashing up places. And we show them videos of the police instigating riots. And this absolutely crumbles the right-wing case of send in the military. It destroys it completely. And it shows the police not as any institution that has any credibility whatsoever, as an institution that wants to actually help anybody or serve and protect, right, which is the propaganda line, which neoliberalists are very good at propaganda. The credibility of the police department is now zero, maybe negative, to the point now where the only good cop is a cop that has resigned. At this stage in the game, there is no police officer who is on the police force who can be considered a good cop. They are all culpable. They are, just the putting of bricks around, right, places. They're putting bricks around so that people can just grab it and throw it and cause property damage as a spur in the moment. It's a trap. It's a trap they've laid, right? And Like that's entrapment at the very least. I like to think about it a little bit like a little bit more advanced, where the police will put these piles of bricks in places so that they're already ready to go, so that when the police show up in plainclothes, they can start causing property damage easily enough. Which we have video of them doing. So I don't see any reason to believe, why wouldn't they help themselves out like that? Why not have bricks and stones and things like that just lying around that the police can then use to smash up an establishment, which they definitely do. So if that's the game, right? If that's the game that's being played, then there's looters and rioters can literally say, we're just doing what the police do, right? If it's okay for the police to do, then it's okay for us to do. And if they want to play that game, the looters and the rioters are going to play it better, right? There's more of them. They're more agile than the police, it seems. The police can lock things down. The police can put like large armored groups around. But people can seem to be able to do flash organizations and snap up in places and cause problems fast enough that the police can't respond to it successfully. The police more or less have retreated into their gated community. They are gating themselves around the property, right? They're trying to maintain the capital of wealth. Or the wealth of, or they're trying to keep capital safe. They're trying to ensure that these rioters and looters don't go into residential neighborhoods, specifically white suburban residential neighborhoods. The last thing these police, because the police don't actually work, or live rather, the police don't actually live in the neighborhoods that they subjugate or oppress. They don't actually live in those neighborhoods, right? They live in the white suburbs, or they live, in the inner city, which is where they're protecting. They don't give a shit about any of the black suburbs or any of that kind of stuff, right? They're staying out of those, just sending in SWAT teams, right, in order to try and deal with the situation that they themselves participate in and they themselves create. So. We've got a real Batman situation going on here, where like we have this quasi-military force that is sucking up all the resources we could use to do a lot of other stuff. Like if Batman used even a tenth of the wealth on social services, like just repairing Arkham Asylum, right? Straight up. If he gave a tenth of the wealth that he uses to violently enact his will against these criminals on attempting to help them, by improving the quality of their life. But like so many of Batman's villains, like everyone thinks like the Joker, he's just insane, okay? But with the new movie Joker, right, it's sort of taken that piece away too. But many of these villains are just like a guy, like Sandman is literally a guy who wants to get medicine for his daughter, like so many of these villains are motivated by just like, hey, I've got a sick kid. Hey, I've got, a family to feed. And if that was taken away as a problem for them, would they be villains? Would they be fighting so hard against this establishment? And so there's a washing away, right? There's a washing away that is attempting to happen. People are washing away the influence of corporations. For years and years, the corporate structure, you would say, well, we want to raise taxes on corporations. And these corporations would lie and say, well, then we'll leave. And they started saying that like 5-10 years ago. Well, then we'll just leave. Oh, well, then we'll just leave. And I've really percolated on that. And I've come out the other side, and I think a lot of other people have come out the other side to say, good, get out of here. We don't want you here. Leave. Get out. Just go away, right? We don't consider you valuable. You're not important. If you leave, someone else will do your job. Like the bluff that they're, like the total bluff that they're trying to do is like, let's go crazy and say we raise their taxes by 15%, right? Their tax rate is only at, like, here in Canada is like at 20 to 30%, depending on where you are. So let's raise it to 55%. Okay? So you're telling me that you're willing, instead of to take 45% of the profits that you're making, and of course, because of marginal taxes and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't actually work that way. But let's pretend like, okay, they get 40%. Let's say they get 40% of the cut. Okay? So they get 40% of the profits, they get to take it home. And you're telling me that they're willing to drop their profits to zero because their taxes went up. I mean, I would be salivating to open up that business. Like, if Walmart pulled out, and because they were only going to get 40% of the profits, holy cow. Are you kidding me? I know tons of people who would just be salivating. Please, I'll do it. I'll do it. Please, can I do it? Can I organize to have a Walmart right here? Can I own that? Can I, please? Hey, 40% of the profits that Walmart makes out of a neighborhood? I would love it if someone who actually lived in the neighborhood owned this Walmart, right? Owned this Target, owned these businesses, but that's not how it works. It's all corporate owned. It goes to some other neighborhood, right? And ultimately into some bank account. And everybody knows that's true. And so these protesters are going through and they're just smashing these institutions. And they're just saying, well, you threatened to leave, so leave, right? You threatened to leave, so leave, right? You proved that you're not invested, simply even by saying it. Simply even by saying, well, then I'll just leave. Well, then you're a fucking traitor, aren't you? Then this whole idea that the wealth was going to trickle down into the economy was total bullshit in the first place, wasn't it? It's a total tacit admission that, oh, I'm just going to leave if you ask me to participate fairly in the society, right? Oh, well, then all that trickle-down stuff was a bullshit lie, wasn't it? Right? It was a bullshit lie, so we tried to raise your taxes, and then you said, oh, well, then I'll just leave, which is comical and hilarious because we tax your income, you motherfucker, right? So we're going to tax the income that you made up until the moment that you leave, and then we're going to tax the income of the guy who comes in to replace you, because someone 100% is going to replace you, because you're not important and you suck. So there's this washing away that's happening, this movement of rioters and looters going through and just stripping the society of its neoliberal edifices, just saying to the society, these places should not exist. They should just go away. They should be extracted from the society. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because once a religious ideology or a death cult is defeated, you smash their temples, you break their idols, and you replace it with the new. Boomers always lament that millennials destroyed the diamond market, millennials destroyed this market, millennials destroyed that market. As a millennial, I'm going to tell you we're quite proud of that. We're quite proud that we destroyed those things. We're quite proud that we destroyed those markets. We're quite happy that those markets are destroyed. We will be happy when neoliberal capitalism is destroyed as well. Have fun out there, guys. Stay safe.